أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وأما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار فلا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى آله الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted all of your great deeds and amal, especially every step and every effort that you have taken on the path of the Ahlul Bayt and the Quran in the beautiful month of Muharram, commemorating the beloved Sayyid Shahada alayhi salatu wasalam, granting all of us inshallah through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala his beautiful ziyarah within our lifetime and inshallah the benefits of his shafa'a in the next by reciting in loud salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
And inshallah we can include the souls of the marhumin and marhumat, all of the beloved ones and the deceased ones of the community, of your family members, whether here or all around the world, by reciting again the second loud salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
And inshallah we can ease the pain and sorrow and the grieving from the heart of our Imam of time, Hazrat Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman al-Jalal ta'ala al Sharif, by expressing our condolences to him, by reciting our loudest of salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So they're asking, like, by the fourth salawat, make a couple of steps and come forward towards the number.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
If you guys do not listen, I'm going to keep on reciting salawat. So by fifth salawat, come closer towards the number.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
They say it's good, inshallah, so inshallah will be good for the rest of the majlis. Recite the salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We're thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this bounty and blessing, one of a kind bounty and blessing to be able to get together, sit together, form a majlis with a beautiful name of Sayyid Shahada alayhi salatu wasalam and the Ahlul Bayt and the teachings of the Quran. And inshallah be able to have a little bit of a friendly discussion of what it is that we can gain from this majalis. That was the whole theme that we started our discussion. What is our objective? Then inshallah we're trying to get to the stage that we can understand what does it take, what does it mean, and what will be the means in order to make that companionship in which will grant all of us that prosperity of those who were able to make that bond and tie with Sayyid Shahada. As we read constantly on the Ziyarat of Ashura. Why do we repeat Ziyarat of Ashura? We're supposed to think on the concept of it, right? Part of it is recitation. Part of it, again, is that emotional aspect of it. The rest of it is what? The Ziyarat of Ashura is the dua. Within this dua, literally speaking, so many concepts are embedded, right? Because technically speaking, Ziyarat of Ashura, the words of al-Ma'asum, what does it mean? It means that on every word of it, we can draw a lesson. And I'm sure you can find so many commentaries, so many books that has the sharh, right? The explanation of the phrases of Ziyarat of Ashura. So So in the Ziyarat of Ashura, we constantly repeat every year, perhaps every Thursday, perhaps every day of Ashura, day of Arba'in, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we wish to be among the ashab, the companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada sallallahu alayhi wa. And we actually ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the last sajda of the Ziyarat of Ashura, right? To do what? That, oh Allah, resurrect us with the ashab of Sayyid al-Shuhada. So is this like a wish that we just do it out of the group? The example that they give of a farmer who doesn't plant anything and constantly does dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, oh Allah, grant me the best of the harvest. Remember the example yesterday? If we all start to do dua for, what was the example? For a chai, mashallah, ahsan, right? If you sit here, nobody shows up on time, nobody puts up, the hot water, nobody takes out the chai, nobody makes the chai, nobody puts the cream, nobody puts whatever the ingredients that we put in the chai, and we all come here pretty late and everybody does the dua, then inshallah the chai will be ready. Right? Now is this like the same du'as that we do in Ziyarat of Ashura? As we place our forehead facing the Qibla, after going through all of the lessons of Ziyarat of Ashura, the end of it is what we call it the finale of it. It's that prime of it, which is why we go for the sajda. It's like we already have cleansed the heart. Now that's why we bow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We belittle ourselves, right? To ask Him sincerely. And when we're asking Him sincerely, we ask to be resurrected among the ashab of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Right? To be resurrected with the companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada. The companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada, they were one of a kind. Right? They fought alongside of Imam Hussein when everybody else, literally speaking, betrayed the Imam. They went through so many hardships in which we formed 10 days, perhaps 20, 30, 40 days of majalis just to commemorate what they've done to it. So is it fair for me and you, after 1200, 1300 years sitting here in, mashallah, a very cool area with the great lightings, great systems, like live YouTube channels, all of the mu'mineen and mu'minat, all of the brightful faces, right? And sitting on the white, like mashallah cloth, everything is perfect, to be resurrected with, that's how I'll say the Shah. Would that be justice? Would that be fairness? Or is that something, a wish that inshallah maybe if Allah wants will grant us? Or no, there is a connection, right? There is a connection. Remember, the reason we commemorate the tragedy of Ashura is not only to learn historical facts. So, okay, this is what happens, X amount of people versus X amount of people. He started first, then he threw the first arrow, then he threw the first spear, then he threw the first strike of the sword, then the horsemen came, it becomes a movie. Right? No, it's not only about the historical facts. Okay, so that's not it. What else? Is it about the lessons that we learn from perhaps Imam Hussein, his companions, versus Ubaydullah Marasad and his companions? The characteristics of people. If that's the only case, again, remember, in the history of mankind, we have so many uprisings against the act of injustice. So why do we focus on the act of Imam Hussein and not anybody else? There has to be something else, right? There has to be something else that, as I mentioned, it becomes the origin of why the movement of Imam Hussein becomes more popular and more popular and more popular every year that passes by. Despite of how much pressure they put against it. What do I mean pressure against it? Again, don't take it granted for being sitting here, alhamdulillah, in a very nice area. A lot of countries, it's forbidden, it's banned to do what? To do the very same measures that we're doing here, right? And you'll be surprised. A lot of countries that they name themselves among the, mashallah, top countries in the world, but they banned the majalis with the name of Imam Hussein. Why do you think that is? You're remembering a person who lived 1200 years ago. We had a discussion with one of our colleagues. It's like, should we say who is Hussein or who was Hussein? Who is Imam Hussein or who was Imam Hussein? Right? There was another discussion. Right? If you're talking about a person who lived 1200 years ago, why should be so much fear? Why should people put a ban on it? Why should people stop people from sitting down in the masjid like this and start talking about this movement? Because they see the growth of it from within. the difference between the movement of Imam Hussein and any other movement within the history of mankind, from beginning all the way to the end. What is that difference? The pathway of Imam Hussein is open. It's not like a one unique example that took place on a given specific circumstance and it will not repeat itself. No, as I mentioned, the famous quotation, every day of our life could be a day of Ashura. Every land in which we live on every day of our life could be representing Karbala. But according to our own limits, according to our own capabilities. In a sense, every decision we make in every day of our life can put me on the side of Ashab of Imam Hussein, the companions of Imam Hussein, or the companions of someone such as Umar Sa. Every decision that we make. And that's what makes the movement of Imam Hussein a live movement. It never comes to an end, right? Why? Because they set the goal. They acted, they function as a role model that is not only in the past, but it has that live spirit. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. Do not assume those who've been slain on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as dead people. Rather, they are alive. Where? They are alive to the extent that they gain their sustenance at the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So many lessons we can drive from the very same ayah, right? It's not only a matter of a physical death, because you take the tragedy of Ashura and you give it to any of the people who have studied perhaps the strategies of war, strategies of fighting, perhaps to some extent political science, and you show what happens in the tragedy of Ashura, they have so many criticisms. It's like, why Imam Hussein continued when he got informed? Because Imam Hussein literally was informed of the betrayal of the people of Kufa way before he actually reached Karbala, right? But he still continued the path. Why didn't Imam take the third route? Why did Imam, if he had the intention of uprising, why did he take the women and children? If I'm going to go for the fight, do I take my sister and my wife and my daughter? Or if I'm going to go fight, I'll make sure I take my buddy here, right, to make sure I have a strong team. Which one? If Imam Hussein was going for a fight, why did he take the women and children? All of this criticism. On the day of Ashura, the way of formation, why Imam Hussein never let someone such as Hazrat Abbas to go and fight in the battlefield? He was known for his courage, right? He was known for his skills. He was known for his bravery. Why didn't Imam Hussein allow him to go to the battlefield? All of these questions and questions and questions and questions. Yes? Why? Because the method we're looking, the perspective that we're using, the standard that we're using is not the common standard that typically people look at, or that perspective that usually people use to measure the facts and realities of this life. What is the common perspective? The more I have, the more successful I am. Right? The more of the resume, the more pages of the resume, the more of the accomplishments, the more of the degrees, the more years of, let's say, experience, the more of the dollar in the bank account, the more of the investment, the more of the housing, the more of the, continue, the more, the merrier. That's what they say, yes? But is that necessarily the reality of why we've been created in this world? Is that necessarily the paradigm that we want to make sure that it sticks in our mind? Because living in this world automatically defaults into this paradigm, that we want more. As a human being, it is within our innate nature. What is it within our innate nature? We try to avoid any sort of, what we call it, limitations. We want to live forever. We don't want to become sick ever. We want to have all the money in the world. We want to be able to go anywhere we want. We want to be able to do whatever we want. We want to, the just absolute sense of freedom. Yes? Is that possible in this world? Even if you're the richest person in the world, can you have absolute freedom? Why not? Use the example of this room, right? There is one chair, one microphone. How many of us can talk at the same time? Maybe one. If you fight, maybe two. If the brother comes, maybe three, right? Maximum 4 or 5. There is a limitation. Not everybody can speak at the same time. Not everybody can give the lecture at the same time. Not everybody can recite the dua at the same time. The world of limitation. That's what we refer to as dunya. What does dunya mean? It comes from dunov. What does dunov mean? Dunov means low. What does it mean, low? Low means when it comes to the sense of the hierarchy of existence. Some of the stuff may become technical, just censor that within your mind. I don't want, just continue with it. When it comes to the hierarchy of existence, the lower the existence become, the more limitations it has. Vice versa, the higher existence goes, the less amount of limitation it has. So when we are in the dunya, which means the lowest of the low, the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the realms, we have the utmost amount of limitation. What is that limitation? Our physical limitation. We can only be here in one place at one time. We cannot be in multiple places. If you're here, if you're focusing on the speaker, we cannot focus on something else. Can I focus on the speaker and focus on my cell phone at the same time and call it multitasking? Or no, in reality I'm focusing on one and I'm trying to give that extra side attention to the other second thing. And usually, if it's my phone, the phone becomes number one. I'm so focused on it. What's the sign of it? If someone is looking at their phone during the majlis, just snatch their phone from their hand. What happens? What would they do? Bro, what? Yeah. You can try it on this. Okay. Don't try this at the majlis, right? Or vice versa. Let's say I'm listening to the lecture and I'm watching something else on YouTube. It's multitasking. I want to gain a lot more during the month of Muharram, so I have lecture on YouTube, I watch a live lecture, and I be present in the majlis, so I get double of the sawab. I get double of the noha. I get double of the sawab of crying for Imam Hussein. Good deal, huh? And imagine if I have 2 cell phones, I can have 3 lectures at the same time. Right? Is that what it is? Am I really focusing on one? Or the limitation does not allow me? So the dunya, the world that we're living in, comes with that limitation. Now vice versa, what's the way to break free from this limitation? Is it just to buy gain a lot more, let's say money? Is it to gain a lot more fame? Is it to gain a lot more connections? Is it to gain a lot more, let's say, the people who have the power, so I become friend with them, so I can benefit from their, let's say, power, money, fame, whatever they have? Or no, the path of limitation is the path of breaking free from this limitation is a different path. I have to focus on that perspective. Right? As I mentioned, a lot of times we talk to the common perspective, and through the lens of the common perspective, we look at the tragedy of Ashura. Right? The common perspective was applied by the majority. Yes? The 30,000 people on the day of Ashura, or on the eve of the Ashura. What they were thinking in their mind? 30,000 people. What they were thinking? We won. Because we literally killed everywhere. We did not even leave a single man left in the caravan of the opponents, right? So in their mind, they were thinking they're winners. Not only them, but the majority of the people even on the suburbs. All the way to where? To Damascus even. So imagine from all the way from Kufa to Damascus, the people were thinking that Imam Hussein lost the battle. Why do I say this? In Sham, one of the companions who approached Imam Sajjad, he asked the very same question. It's like, why did Imam Hussein go for the defeat? What does Imam Sajjad respond? He says, listen to the time of Azan. When the Mukabbir goes to recite the Azan, what does he say? Does he say, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah? He says, yes. So as long as that name has been mentioned on the Muazzin, on where they recite the Azan, the true winner is Imam Hussein. This is not the first argument. Similar argument happens at the time of Muawiyah, right? As you know, Muawiyah is the first one who, technically speaking, started this tradition right? This trend was first a trend, then it became a tradition, then it became part of like a normal, like a daily thing. To do what? To start cursing. Not cursing in general, but cursing one specific person. Right? Who? Amir al-Mu'minin. For how many years? Allah, right? And he continued and continued and continued. Until when? Until way past the time of Amir al-Mu'minin, when the son of Mughayra, the one who did the act of disrespect in the city of Medina to Sayyid Fatima, this is what his son, right? He reports this one. He says, one day I saw my father coming back from Sham as they had constantly like meetings up with Muawiyah, and every time he would come back, Muawiyah would have like, given him so much, like let's say presents and gifts and like what do you call it, like the physical, like monetary, like gifts, that he would always come back with a big old smile on his face. This time when he came back, I saw him very sad, very upset, as if like the whole world has changed. So I asked him, Father, what happened? He's like, I'm coming back from visiting the worst, human on the planet Earth. He's referring to Muhammad. The son says, every time I ask you the same thing, you say I come back from visiting the best person in the world. What changed this time? He said, I was there. I was we were talking with Muawiyah, and I told him that for so many years, you started this trend of cursing Amir al-Mu'minin. He's long gone. You have taken over the throne. You have the power. You have established your government. You have got what you want. Isn't it time to put a stop to this, curse? He says, in response, what did Muawiyah says? First, he sighed, right? Sighed out of sorrow, out of being upset. Then what does he say? He says, how many kings have you seen to come and be gone? So many, right? And he starts to name a couple of them. 1, 2, 3. He says, he came, he tried to do good, he left, as he left, his name was. 2 came, he tried to do good, as he left, his name was gone. The third one came and he did some good, as he left, not only his name was gone, but a lot of people tried to oppress him, and that's why I try to stand up for his, for his right. Now, what do you think is going to happen if I leave? Will people remember my name? Or no? Is it something that my brother and my cousin, right, referring to Nabi Rasulullah, has done, that on a daily basis, people remember his name at least 5 times per day? Referring to what? The very same Azan, right? At least 5 times a day, people, doesn't matter which faith, which segment, right? We have to constantly say the same phrase, same name, same reminder. He tells us what Muhammad is after. Technicality, he's not after money, he's not even after the power, he's not after all of this stuff. No, he's after one specific objective. What is that objective? To remove the name of the Bani Hashim, which means to remove the name of Islam. And that's what he actually confessed when he gets the power after the Battle of Siffin. He goes on a Imambargah, right? The very first thing he says is what? I did not fight against you to tell you about the ahkam of religion. We didn't go through the Battle of Siffin that took such a long time for me to sit and remember and give you the rulings of religion, how to pray, how to fast, how to recite the Quran. No, that's not what I fight for. What do you fight for? He refers to the chair. This is the only reason I'm fighting is to take over the chair, the throne, the power, right? It's that identity that he's after. He wants to be remembered forever, and the means to be remembered forever in his mind is what? To take over everything that Nabi Rasulullah had before him. Whether it's a member, whether it's the teachings, whether it's the topic of Khilafah, or whether it's even talking to people about religion. So that's why the number one enemy at his eyes becomes Amir al-Mu'minin. He becomes the opponent. Same story continued forward to the time of Yazid. Yazid is no different than Muawiyah. He's actually worse, right? As Imam Hussein says, he's the Rajulun Sharwatan. He's the one who's known that publicly that he sins. There's something for a Khalifa to just sin on the background behind the curtains, but it is something else for the Khalifa to come out in the public and sin. That's when the Imam says we have to say Fatiha to Islam. Because even the appearance version of Islam is not been practiced. He's the Khalifa, he's the Rome, everybody looks up to him. Imagine if today you have a speaker that the speaker drinks publicly. What happens? If you guys go and attend the lecture, you have a speaker that publicly sins, publicly lies, publicly steals, publicly do a lot of acts of oppression. Is that said by the Majlis? It's like, if he's sinning, why would I be bothering listening to him? If he doesn't practice what he's saying, why would I be bothering sitting at his Majlis? Very similar concept. So we have to change that perspective. We have to change how we measure stuff. We have to change how we see and perceive items around ourselves. We have to make sure when we set an objective, when we set a goal in our life, that goal is not something that is only because it is being pushed over me, by the trends that I'm living with. Living in every society, by default, generates a lot of what we call dreams or paradigms within our minds, right? So the path of success, right, is always embedded within us. But the path of success sometimes becomes challenging. A very simple example. Let's say you've studied so hard, you finally graduate from university, you've been waiting to finally settle down, whether it be the job, the perfect job, the dream job of your life. You finally find the perfect company, you submit your resume, right? It comes the day of interview and there is a long list of people who are waiting to get the very same job. So very competitive job. You have one shot. You go for the interview. You show up in the interview and say, oh, the person who's doing the interview is a female, right? The very first thing you do as you walk into the room, she reaches out to shake your hand. What do? You give her a hug. Yeah? Because you want a job so bad, right? You want to make sure we're friendly, we're a teamwork, I'm a hard worker, So I go beyond even shaking hands, right? Remember, every decision we make, in reality, we're measuring ourselves. That am I going to be capable of making that final decision when it counts? Or no, when it comes to simple things such as, for example, doing a handshake with Imambargah, I can, Sheikh, that's no problem. No, these are not a problem. When it comes to the major sins, I have to make sure I have to prevent myself. Wait a second. If I cannot say no to myself on the minor little things, what's the guarantee that I'm going to say no to myself when it comes to major things? What's the guarantee when I see everything that I have worked for at risk to say no and go with it and go according to what the truth is? This is the reality of Kerala, right? And that's why only a few of the few were able to hold on to about the lives. Again, Imam's words were not exclusive to the companions, right? Imam did so many sermons, so many khutbahs, right? So many speeches. On every manzil that Imam stopped, leading to the land of Karbala on the night before Ashura, in the morning of the Ashura, throughout the day of Ashura, even after the namaz, constantly Imam is talking. So he's talking to everybody. He's not only talking to the ashab. How come only about 72, give or take, were able to understand what Imam is saying? Not only Imam is saying, but he's speaking, so many of the ashab, they give a speech, right? They actually did a lecture, they had this sermons, and they were trying to call upon their friends, they were trying to call upon the people who were living in their own town. They were trying to call upon them so maybe it would be a sort of awakening. How come nothing was going through? How come everything was blocked? How come everything was jammed? Very good example of it is when you're using your cell phone and everything's fine until, for example, when you go through a tunnel. Right? The tunnel has a strong of bricks. As you enter the tunnel, there goes the signal. No matter how great of a cell phone you may have in your hand, if there is no signal, what happens? Connection gets lost. You can have the number one, the fresh off the factory, the latest gadget of the phone, right? With all of these cool features, but if there is no connection, what's the use of it? You cannot use it for anything. Sometimes we do this in camps, right? We take the phones away. What happens? It becomes the most stressful situation for a lot of us. We're so used to it. right? We're so used to it. This being used to it is something that we have to work on. This being used to it, every so often I have to say, okay, am I like used to this because it really has a benefit for me? No, it has become part of my identity. If it has become part of my identity, I have to be careful. Why? Because that's exactly where I will be tested. Why? Because the identity is formed by itself. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the identity of what? Submission. Right? He wants an identity that will submit his will or her will for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hence, a lot of times, and you may find examples of this one. Usually, the things that we like the most, we get the test. You get a test on it the most. So if it's our cell phone, if it's our video game, if it's like something that belongs to us and we like it very dearly. Very famous story of a great scholar actually. As he was about to pass away, the people were like, usually when a person is about to pass away, as they like face in the qibla, people come around and they start to recite the Quran and they start to do what they call it talqeen. They dictate the shahadatain to the person, right, as he's about to leave. So he will say the shahadatain, so he will leave, the soul will leave the body in the stage of faith, right? So all these people are gathering around him, and he's a scholar, and they keep on saying say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, say I bear witness that there is no, there is only one God, and there is no God except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No matter how many times they say, as if his lips are sealed. Right? They keep on telling him, he doesn't respond. They tell him, he doesn't respond. They tell him, he doesn't respond. They go and they ask ask for a senior scholar to come in and they say, hey, this is what's happening. He's about to leave, to die. No matter what we tell him, he doesn't respond. So the senior scholar comes and he does little du'as, and people come in, they do some nazar and niyaz. His physical health becomes a little bit better. Now he's able to speak. So immediately they ask him, what happened? You're telling you to say shahadatain, and for the entire life you've been teaching us to say shahadatain. Why you're not saying shahadatain right before you? He says, if you were to see what I was saying, then you would understand why I was not able to say shahadatain. And guess what he was saying? He was seeing Shaitan across from the room, holding the watch and pointing at the watch with a hammer in his hand. The watch, a hammer, and a Shaitan. What was the connection? This is that watch that Shaitan was holding in his hand was a watch that was passed on to me from generations after generations, from my ancestors to my father, to grandfather, to my father. To me, it was something that I liked very dearly. A precious thing for me. I always cleaned it, I always made sure it's good, it's functioning, it's perfect, it's I always kept it in my drawer, and nobody else would know about it. It's something that I spent time, right? As I'm about to leave this world, right? If he comes to say the shahadatain, Shaitan comes. What does he do? He goes after those stuff that he liked the most. He picks up the watch, he wings it, and he shows the hammer. If you say shahadatain, I'll collect the watch. Simple as that. The fear of losing what I like the most stopped me from saying the shahadatain. Remember, at those stages of the last stages, it's not the mind thinking. And a lot of times we try to pre-calculate. It's okay, when I'm there, I want to do this, no problem. I do this counter-attack to the shaitan. No, shaitan, no problem. Right? No, at that time is when the reality comes, right? The questioning is not with the mind. The questioning of Nakir and Munkar is not with the mind that we're used to in this world. If it's with the mind in this world, then we will be alive. When we're dead, this mind is not functioning. That means I cannot do the calculation. So what are they asking when they say Man Rabbuk, when they say Man Nabiyyuk, Man Imamuk? Who is your Lord? Who is your Nabi? Who is your Prophet? Who is your Imam? What are they asking? They're asking from our reality. They're asking from our soul. The soul is what we have actualized in this world, what we have practiced. That's why a lot of people, they cannot answer. It's not of the matter of thinking. So if I'm a scholar, I've read so many books, I'll be able to do an argumentative, let's say, dialogue with Nakir and Munkar. Right? No, it's what my soul actually represents. So if I have those attachments, the very same attachments will prevent me from talking about the truth. I'll be talking about those attachments. Which is why they call it the sakaratul maut. Right? the stages in which people, like literally speaking, it becomes the most difficult situation. Now, it was the same thing in the Battle of Ashura. We see the exact opposite, right? Sometimes they ask this question from the 30,000 opponents. That why did you guys have to go so severely on the Ashab, on the Imam Hussein, on the Bani Hashim? I mean, think about it, 30,000 versus about 100, right? How long would that battle take place? If 30,000 people want to, kill 100 people, 30,000, right? If they march, the 100 people will be gone. So maybe 1 hour, 2 hours. How long did the tragedy of Ashura take place? From the morning prayer all the way to Asr prayer, not noon prayer, but in the afternoon. What was the problem? They had the order to kill. They didn't have the order to capture alive, right? They had the order to kill. They had the order to actually destroy. I'm sorry, not to kill, but to destroy, to vanish, to make sure nothing is left. Why did it take such a long time? So they asked this question, and they asked, why did you guys go so severely on the Ashab? They said, if you guys were to see how firm they were on what they were doing. The description of a lion holding on to a sword. The lion holding on to a sword. It doesn't mean the lion that doesn't have a hand that's all. No, it's a metaphor, right? It means that they were holding on to their sword in such a firm, in a way that the only way to remove the sword was to what? Cut off the arm of the lion. And he's a lion. He will not give up his sword. That's why we have to go so severe. That's why we have to surround him. That's why we have to take whatever we can, just to make sure we take them out one by one. Right? That's why it took such a long time. So what's the difference? How can one become so firm when it comes to a battlefield, and vice versa? So many people run away. What do these guys saw, and what is it that we can see after 1,200 years, right? And what do people of Ahmadi and Baytullah saw at that time? See, that's the equation that we constantly have to continue to contemplate when it comes to this, the movement of Imam Hussein. The movement is in a way of, again, enlivening what are the true values within our hearts. It's not just to go on a daily basis. What's the daily basis tells us? Get up in the morning, go to work, come back home, get up in the morning, go to work, come back home, get up in the morning, go to work, come back home, right? And then maybe on the weekends we go forward, if there's a dua moment, right? Dua moment tonight on the weekend, right? What else do we do? Or a lot of us, perhaps we're students, get up and go in the morning, go to school, come back home. Same thing, the same cycle of life. Is that a cycle of life for a mu'min? Or is that a cycle of life for a disbeliever? If it's for a disbeliever, what should be the cycle of life for a mu'min? Think about that. If I'm believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I'm believing in resurrection, if I'm believing in Ma'ad, if I believe in prophethood, if I believe in Imamah, if I believe in the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how would that change this very same cycle of life? If it's the same thing, then what's the difference between me and a disbeliever? There has to be one extra piece in this cycle of life that would change a life of a believer to what we actually refer to as being truly alive. Not just existing. Going through redundant cycles only gives us existence. We're there. No difference between us and so many billions and gazillions people who lived before us, right? Go back in time. They had doctors, they had engineers, they had, mashallah, whatever we have in our minds. They had cops, they had scholars, they had any profession that we have today, they had it on a previous, let's say generations before us, right? They came, they lived, they gone. Now we come, we live, and we'll be gone. 100 years, 200 years from now, all of this year is gone, yes? The next generations will become. So if it's the very same redundant cycle of work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, then what will be the difference between me and any other person who doesn't believe in the hereafter? It should be one extra piece. What is that one extra piece? That one extra piece makes the difference from Like the person becoming a companion of Sayyid Shahada, the person becoming just another member of the military of Ahmadi. What is that missing piece? I have to understand that everything I do is for the sake of Allah, right? Submission to the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is it? It's going to be going to work, right? Inshallah, then once you have to go to like sleep, before the sleep, do a little bit of contemplation. About what? About my work, how to do my job better, how to make my sleep better, how to make my life better, how to make everything more easy? No. Do a little contemplation on what? That what is it that I'm going to work for? Is it to have a higher paycheck? Or is it to have more of a service towards others? Right? Is it to get that promotion at the end of the year? Or is it to be able to provide more from what Allah has given to me for the sake of others? But when I take that rest, how would that rest get me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Part of it is the etiquette of sleeping. For example, go to bed early, or get up in the morning early, yes? Or go to sleep at the stage of wudu and tahara. What else? What should I be contemplating on this resting aspect of my life? At least half of our life we are sleeping, right? Give or take. If you do the calculation, half of our life basically is spent on sleeping. So technically, when I ask your age, you should all divide it by half and tell me your age. So if I'm about 40, technically I've lived about 20 years, right? If, we go half and half. So how can I, if I'm smart, moment is dangerous, right? How can I optimize the sleeping time? And I see people yawning. We're talking about sleeping. Recite this salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
1:30.
No, what time?
What time is it?
Yeah.
8:01.
8:01, okay. So recite the salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Recite one more salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
If I'm trying to have that lifestyle of a believer, yes, how would I be able to optimize the amount of life, the 1/3 of my life, right, that I spend on sleeping? It depends, like a lot of people they sleep more, so 1/3 is very subjective. But okay, I'll let it go, I'll leave it as a 1/3, right? How can I make it optimized? How can I gain benefit from it? Part of it is etiquette, part of it is that contemplation. To understand why even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed the whole night for us. Right? The sweet dreams that we say is really sweet. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it this sleeping of the night very sweet for us? Understand the wisdom behind it. The more we understand this, the more we understand the bounties which Allah has given to us. Right? To be deprived of sleeping, take a look at those who have insomnia. Right? Actually, one of the ways of torturing people is what? Insomnia. Well, not insomnia by itself, but literally Ahsan, right? It's one of the ways of torture. And Allah has given it to us for free, that every day, 1/3 of our 24 hours, we are like, yes. Have you ever thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that snoozing part? Never? We just say, oh, why do you snore? Why do you make so much noise? Right? It should be the opposite. Say, Allah, alhamdulillah, He has given us such a mode that, if you do not go according to this, let's say 1/3 of the sleeping time, the 8 hours, 6 hours, whatever time that you sleep per day, I will not be able to function the very next day. Right? The function not to, again, gain more and more and more of a limitation. No, the function to gain more and more and be able to break free from the limitation. Right? That becomes a move of non-myself. So understanding, right, what are the criterions of which side is the right side, which side is the wrong side. So right now when I ask, everybody says, Sheikh, that's the most obvious question. The side of Imam Hussein was right. Why? Because he's Imam Hussein, he's Imam Masoom, he's the grandson of Nabi Rasulullah, he has all of these discernments, he's infallible Imam, you have a reason. But the correct way to actually ask this question is to picture ourselves in that situation, yes? Or in our time, how to be able to tell which side versus which side. Which side is the side of right? Which side is the right of falsehood? So that I can be able to pick the side of the right? So what would be the criterion? What would be the sign? We talked briefly about it. Would it be the trends? If the majority of the people, they say, okay, such and such are the right people, would that be good enough? No. Why? The majority at that time were saying Imam Hussein is Khariji. What does Khariji mean? The one who is rebellious against the Khalif of his time, right? They were looking at Imam, and that's why basically the juristic, what you call justification that they had to go and form a line against Imam Hussein was that he has gone against the Khalif of his time. So when he has broken his bay'ah, his blood becomes free. They can basically kill, right? So that was the justification. Majority were saying or looking at the Imam as Khariji, right? The majority at the time of Nabi Rasulullah, for example, the majority right at the time of the demise of Nabi Rasulullah. As Nabi Rasulullah went away from, their soul departed from this world, how many people were around Amir al-Mu'minin and the rest of the Ahlul Bayt? One hadith says actually 3. Then the hadith says then it grew a little bit. To what extent? 7 people. Imagine that. 23 years of worth of Nabi Rasulullah, not just a public speaker, someone such as Nabi Rasulullah, who is the last of the prophets that humankind will ever see, who has brought the miracle of Quran, who has spoken in the language of the Quran, in the language of revelation, who has shown so many miracles, and they have gone to so many ups and downs and the battles and so many history after 23 years. When he passes away, only 7 people are able to hold on to the actual core teachings of Nabi Rasulullah. So where is the majority? They're racing one another to meet at the place called Saqifa. That's majority, right? At the time of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, what happens to the majority? Everybody knows the history, right? The very same majority started the betrayal of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. To what extent? To the extent that they were writing letters to Muawiyah that if you want, we will send the head of Imam al-Hassan to you at any time you want. That was the majority. Time of Imam Hussein, so obvious. And it continues till when? To the time of occultation. Time of occultation, again, you have the majority. Is the majority a criterion? No. So if the majority is not the criterion, what would be the criterion? Would it be the words, the statements, the slogans, right? Would that identify who is talking of the truth and who is not? Let's say if you have a couple of different, very good public speakers and they all speak very good statements. How can I tell which one is actually speaking of the truth? Is it merely the stuff they say? Is it merely the teachings they use? Sometimes, we could be even using the Quran and the Hadith. And that's where it becomes scary. When you look at the history of Islam, there are so many quotations from the Quran, which at their time, they were the number one unique quotation. For example, Kafana Kitab Allah. For me, the Quran is enough. And believe it or not, even today, you hear the same reason. Some say, no, I don't understand Hadith, I want to go back to the Quran. But okay, go back to the Quran. The Quran, as Nabi Rasulullah says, I leave you behind 2 weighty things, referred to as Thaqalain, right? And these 2 weighty things will not depart one another until when? Until the day of Qiyamah. If you want that guidance, you have to hold on to both. We've got one aspect who holds on to one, another aspect who holds on to the other. We hold on to the Ahlul Bayt, we forget about the Quran. The other ones, they hold on to the Quran, forget about the Ahlul Bayt. So there's a problem here, right? So if it's only slogans, I have to be careful. I could be using the very same religious slogans for the sake of falsehood. Perfect example, Battle of Siffin. Imagine fighting against people who have the Quran in front of them. Who can go to that fight? Right? Oh, these guys are Muslims, they're brothers. And that's what they were saying. And your Muhammad says, no, continue. So they're holding a Quran. How can I shoot an arrow towards the one who's holding a Quran in his hand? Right? So it's not merely of what people say or make a statement. Obviously, the ones who are on the path of falsehood, they will take advantage of the partial of truth to present and cover their falsehood. So it's not slogans, it's not statements, it's not the majority. So what becomes a criterion if I want to understand which side is the right side? For the people who were living at the time of Imam Hussein, all of them, most of the Kufans, at least they knew of Abdullah Hussein. Why would Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura go ahead, use the Quran, use the Amama of Nabi Rasulullah, and take an oath on the Quran saying that I am Hussein, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, grandson of Nabi Rasulullah. Think about that. Why would Abu Abdullah do such a thing? People did not know him. They knew him better than you and I, right? A lot of them grew up together. So what is it not clicking? How come they cannot see the right side? Imam Hussein standing right in front of him. He has what we call the nutq of ma'asum, which means the eloquency of an infallible imam. It's not like he would make mistakes when he delivers a speech, right? When he speaks, he's like, that perfection of speech, but it doesn't go through. So what's wrong here? Think about that. And why do I say all of this stuff? And tonight, let's go and talk about one of the famous companions. This companion, perhaps for all of us, including myself, and especially myself, is that perfect role model. He's known as being the great champion, right? What does great champion mean in that time, right? It's like #1 celebrity in our time, right? So, I don't want to make a comparison, but think of some of the, let's say, heavy, weight champions that a lot of people know, and they have so many fans, and they're so popular. Everywhere they go, you see the pictures of them. Everybody wants to, talk like them, behave like them, right? They become a celebrity known for their courage. This one companion is known for it. He's the high-up commander of the army of Umar Ehsan. He has close to 1,000 people underneath him. 1,000 people. Imagine if you have a company and you have 1,000 employees working for you. Just 1,000 employees. When he has 1,000 soldiers underneath. Whatever he says, these 1,000 people will go and do it. If he says, I want water, he gets 1,000 water right on the spot. If he wants a chai, he's thousands of chai. Right? Such a status. And he's known for his bravery. He's known to be one of the most courageous, fighters among the Arabs. What am I talking about? Hazrat Hur. Yet again, on the day of Ashura, on the very last minute, they find him stumbling. Imagine for someone who's a warrior, on the day of a battle, that you start witnessing him shaking. It's not shiver. Shiver is when perhaps it would not be noticeable. When you look at a great champion that everybody looks up to, whenever we find ourselves at loss, we look up to the greater one. We look up to the stronger ones. And you look at the stronger one is shaking. He's shaking so much that it becomes visible, it becomes obvious. But his friend says, "Oh, Hur, what has happened to you?" If I were to ask that, to name the #1 person in terms of courage, I would have named you. So he has the courage, he has the skill set, he has the status, he has that connection, he has all of the stuff that one can wish for. Just think of if Hazrat Hur continued on the very same path, right? How much money would have he got after the tragedy of Ashura? If he wouldn't have switched sides? How much more status he would have gone, how much more praise and prizes he would have gone, right? How much more famous he would have gone. The 1,000 people underneath him would become probably 10,000 now. He probably would become a governor of the city, right? He would get so much power, so much more influence. He had his entire world and dunya in front of him, his entire career in front of him. All he had to do, he had to hold on for 1 extra hour, and the battle would start. 1 extra hour, the battle would start, and Hur would have become the richest of the rich. But what does he do? He stumbles. Stumbles in a way that the person next to him says, "What's going on with you? Why am I swinging?" And what does he say? He says, I see myself walking between heaven and hell. I'm at the edge of the hell. What does Hazrat Hur sees? That the rest of the Kufans, they do not see. And Hazrat Hur had this vision, this revealed vision to him, that he could see the realities and the angels and all of stuff, and he could see the light of Imam Hussein that everybody else did not see. Well, no, he was literally part of him. As he says, he was the first one who stopped the caravan of Imam Hussein. He was the first one who put the fear in the hearts of the women of Abu Abdullah and the children of Imam Hussein. Just think about it. In a small group, it's very easy to be the tip of a finger. If you do something wrong against a small group, everybody within that small group remembers you, especially the little kids. So imagine on the day of Ashura, when Hazrat Hur wants to make a change, the very first thing perhaps that comes to his mind is how am I going to be answering all of these little kids, because I am the one who stopped them from continuing their journey. I am the one who is responsible for cutting off the water from all of these women and children. So when they become thirsty and thirsty and thirsty, what do? All of these kids, in their own kiddish world, when they look at the enemy, every so often they spot Hazrat Hur. It's oh, he's the one who stopped us. He's the one responsible. So he has this on one side. The other aspect, what does he see? He sees himself between heaven and hell. Why? So his friend asks him, what are you talking about? He says, because I see Imam and Hussein on one side, and I see Yazid and Ubaydullah on the other. I see the Aziz of Fatima on one side. I see the grandson of Nabi Rasulullah on one side, and I see the Walad al-Zina on the other side. I see the illegitimate born on the other side. It is so obvious. Yet again, I don't know how come it took me such a long time. But the path of Imam Hussein is always open. Always open. Even when it comes to the very last minute, and even when you have done such a so bad, such as blocking the pathway of the caravan of Imam Hussein. It's not easy to say stop to someone such as Imam Hussein. It's not easy to try to control the movement of Imam Hussein's caravan in the middle of the land of Karbala, try to station all of these women and children in the middle of the desert, not allowing you to go forward or go backward. That's what Hazrat Hur did before. Now comes the day of Ashura. Some of the reporters, they say Hazrat Hur was always trying to sort of bond between the two sides, and he was hoping that the battle would never take place. But when it came the morning of Ashura, there was no doubt that the battle was going to take place. So he stumbles. The entire world, the entire dunya versus his hereafter. It's not easy to make that change, right? It's a 1 second change, but the outcome. But how great it is for someone such as Hazrat Hur. As he's free, right? He's free from limitation. He gives up all of that dream of the dunya. He gives up all of that belongings of the dunya in one decision. He makes up an excuse. He tells his friend, have you watered your horse? He says, yes, I've just watered my horse. He says, okay, I have to go and water my horse. He goes to the side as he pretends that he's going towards the Furat. Now, a commander, a senior commander, how would he go towards the Khayma of Imam Hussein? For a commander, their ego is the number one thing that they have attachment to. But when that commander finally recognizes the path of the truth, what happens? They break down. Which we refer to as Inkisar. Finally, the heart opens up. He humbles himself. At what stage? He gets down from the horse. He removes his boots. He ties them around each other according to one of the maqatil. He puts them around his neck as a sign of a prisoner. He starts walking towards the tents of Imam al-Hussein while holding his spear upside down and putting his armor on his back, again as a sign of one who has become a prisoner. Not only he walks slowly and he's looking down, because he's ashamed of what he has done. Perhaps this is what is going into his mind, that how I'm going to make up my past. He starts to cry and he starts to sigh so much that his sound reaches the tent of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein is inside of his tent. They hear the sound of a mourning, the sound of a supplication perhaps. So Imam Hussein says, see who that person is. The sound sounds like the sound of a sincere person. Some of the guys, they come out, they say, it's guess who? It's Hur, the senior commander of Ubaydullah. Now here, our beloved Imam Hussein. He doesn't tell other people to go and bring him. No, he himself stands up. He comes out of the khaymah. He goes towards Hur. The minute they go eye to eye, Imam Hussein opens his arms. Hur drops himself to the chest of Imam Hussein. And constantly, as he's crying, what is he saying? هل لي من توبة هل لي من توبة هل لي من توبة. Oh, Abu Abdullah, is there any chance for me to repent? The only line that he keeps on saying, is there any chance for me to repent, oh Imam Hussein? Is there any chance for me to repent? Imam Hussein, what does he say? He doesn't wait. He says, raise your head. Look up. From now on, you have become prosperous. No worries of the background. You've stopped us. You stopped the women and children. You caused fear in the hearts of the women and children. You were the cause of us being thirsty for 3 days. None of those matters. The minute you make that one change, one turn, one step towards Abu Abdullah, he opens his arm for you. Raise your head. Look up, Hur. You're on our side. Welcome, welcome to our side of the army. Hur cannot raise his head. He says, Imam Hussein, if you allow me, let me go and talk to these guys because I was just part of them. Maybe they will reason with me. Imam Hussein says, go for it. He comes back. He faces the lines of the enemy, the ones who were really speaking a couple seconds ago on his side. And he says, he asked them in a questioning form, he said, was I one of the ones who wrote letter inviting Abu Abdullah and Hussein to Kufa? Those guys answered, no, you were not one of the ones who wrote the letter and signed it. It's like, were you guys the one who invited him? Isn't he your guest of honor? Is this how you're supposed to treat your guest of honor? Let go of everything else. Just being a guest of honor in your, and you being the host. Is this how you welcome? You cut off the water for 3 days. You start taking water in front of all of these women and children. You quench the thirst of your horses while these women and children are looking at you and you're not giving them any single water. What kind of a host are you? No matter what he says, the army does not respond. Imam Hussein comes and sends after horses. Hur, come back. If these guys were to listen to any of the reasoning, they would have got the message by now. Nothing will go through them. As Hazrat Hur comes back, he says, oh Abu Abdullah, I was the first to stop you from continuing your path towards Kufa. I was the first to cause the fear in the hearts of your little children. Can I have permission to go to the battlefield as the first of your warriors? Imam Hussein gives him permission. Hur comes up and enters the battlefield and starts to recite his eulogy and saying my name is Hur, and Hur I will use my sword, and I would not give up the host, and I would not give up the guest who has come to my rescue. And he starts to fight and fight and fight. He's a senior commander. They cannot take him out that easily. The order comes to surround him, to attack him from every angle. One comes from the behind with a club to the head of Hazrat Hur. Hazrat Hur falls down on the ground of Karbala. One last shout, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Imam Hussein immediately rushes towards Hazrat Hur. He goes, he sits next to Hazrat Hur, holding on the head of Hazrat Hur on his lap. The very first thing he does, Imam Hussein removes all of the dust and the blood from the face of Hazrat Hur, as if these are the last moments of the life of Hazrat Hur. He opens his eyes, he sees the beautiful face of Imam al-Hussein. how great of an ending it is to be able to open our eyes and see a beautiful face of Imam Hussein before we leave this world. Hazrat Hur doesn't smile. Imam takes out a piece of handkerchief that he has. He ties around the head of Hazrat Hur to cover the wound of his head, and he tells him, you are Hur, just like as your mother has named you Hur, and you will be Hur and free from the limitations of this world. But la yawm ka yawmika ya Aba Abdullah. Every person, almost every companion who fell on the land of Karbala, they had the blessings of seeing or looking at Imam Hussein one last time. At least as their soul were departed from this world, they would see the beautiful face of Abu Abdullah. But on the eve of Ashura, when Sayyida Zainab goes on the top of Talla Zainabiya, when the ground starts to shake, when the sky becomes dark, Sayyida Zainab looks down inside of the Batadagah. What does she see? She sees a circle of friends, a circle of people all around one focus point. What is that focus point? The body of Abu Abdullah on the plains of Karbala. What are these people doing? Some of them with the sword, some of them with the spear, some of them with the cane and wood sticks, some of them with stones and rocks. They're taking whatever they can. What are they aiming for? For the body of Abu Abdullah in the middle of the plains of Karbala. So she becomes Mustab. She places her hand over her head, says, Wa Muhammadan, Wa Aliya, Wa Hamzata. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني بزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم إنا نسألك ونعوذ باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم الله بحق محمد وعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين وتسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج والعافية والنصر واجعلنا من أعوانه وأخص شيعته. اللهم ارحم أمواتنا واشف أمراضنا واجعل عاقبة الأمور خيرا. O Allah, will ask you on the right of Imam Hussein and the right of Muharram, O Allah, to hasten the appearance of our Imam of time and grant all of us the bounty of being part of his true companionship. O Allah, O Allah, O Allah, will ask you to provide all of us forgiveness and provide forgiveness upon all of our marhumin and marhumat. O Allah, will ask you for complete shifa for all of the mu'mineen and mu'minat who have come down with sicknesses, especially from the community. O Allah, will ask you on these nights of Muharram to accept all of our nawalis and grant all of us the bounty of the ziyarat of Imam Hussein and the bounty of their shafa'ah in the next world. O Allah, will ask you to grant all of us the life of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad and the death of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. O Allah, who ask you to continue guiding us on Sirat al-Mustaqim and help us to convey the message of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt to our next generations and offsprings. O Allah, O Allah, O Allah, who ask you to continue granting all of us the bounty to be able to raise the name of Imam Hussein every day of our life. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات.